Today is the last day of voting in Russia's week-long constitutional referendum. A host of amendments are up for consideration. One would link rises in the minimum wage to the cost of living. Another would ban same-sex marriages. But the most important amendment would do an end run around Russia's presidential term limits, allowing Vladimir Putin to stay in power until 2036. CBS News senior foreign correspondent Elizabeth Palmer joins me now from London with more on this. Welcome, Elizabeth. Great to see you. So Russia's parliament approved these amendments back in March. Why is the government holding a vote now? Is this essentially for show?
You might say that, and it certainly is a good question, seeing as we're in the middle of a pandemic. The fact is that Putin's approval ratings are at an all-time low. A lot of that has to do with the economy, and most political analysts think, just as you say, he wanted the gloss, the veneer of popular approval to legitimize this move, which is pretty brazen, and goes very much against the spirit of Russia's term limits rules on a president. When Putin's current term runs out in 2024, under this amendment, he gets to reset his time in office to 0, so he can run for 2 more terms of 6 years each. So all the years that have come before don't count. And he will be the only president to be able to do that. Now, nobody doubted that he would get a win today. It does seem to be a foregone conclusion. He had to postpone this referendum already once to the coronavirus, and so today was very important. And to get an adequate turnout to make it look legitimate, voters have been offered to have election officials come to their apartments in full PPE to let them vote in their living rooms. And voters who decide to go to the polls are being offered things like gift certificates and even raffles for new cars, which tells you something about how desperately President Putin wants this to go right.
But do voters feel free to vote against this resolution?
They do, and we talked to quite a few of them who had all kinds of reasons. One older woman, older people tend to be more in the Putin camp, and one of the amendments in this is that pension rises will be guaranteed. So for the elderly, you know, there was a real incentive to vote yes, but her sons had told her in no uncertain terms that they thought Putin was the wrong man. He was a totalitarian. He was not doing any good for the economy, and they felt their future would be bruised or affected if he stayed in power that long. So she was going to vote no. It truly is a secret ballot. It's just that all the media coverage and the circumstances pretty much assure the vote that President Putin wanted. So it's free, but maybe not fair.
So, Elizabeth, he is now 67 years old. If he were to actually serve until 2036, he'd be leaving the office at the age of 84. And I guess we should remind viewers that technically he has to run for re-election twice, correct? What does he want to do in that time? Is there any indication of that?
Well, most people close to him who have spoken out say that he really likes power. He likes the game, and he likes managing this vast country. We know from the very beginning he wanted to restore Russia's stature in the world after the collapse of the Soviet Union, which he has said was one of the great humiliations of modern history. And so he has some big projects. One of them would be getting U.S. sanctions lifted, and another might be extending Russia's sphere of influence in the Middle East, for example. I think he just loves the job, and he likes being the man, the boss.
And what has been the reaction in Russia to the clause in the Constitution defining marriage as exclusively between a man and a woman?
Well, the LGBT community is angry. and disappointed but not surprised. There is a thriving LGBT community both in Moscow and St. Petersburg, maybe one more in one of the cities in the center of Russia. But outside those big cities, there's a lot of bigotry against homosexuality. You know, Russia is still a very conservative country, and Putin, in his years in office, has reinforced so-called traditional values, and also the Orthodox Church, which is very anti-gay. So practically speaking, the amendments won't change things, as there is presently no same-sex marriage permitted in Russia, but it certainly does send a message that will reinforce reactionary and conservative tendencies inside Russian society.
All right. Well, Elizabeth Palmer in London, thank you so much for your insight into what's going on in Russia right now. We really appreciate it.
Pleasure.